Welcome to the Microdosing for Healing podcast. I'm your host, Casey Garrett, and together we'll be discovering and learning from inspiring voices of healers, medicine keepers, and visionaries. Every episode, we'll explore the world of health, vibrant wellness, and natural medicine for a new era of human society. Welcome to today's episode. Hi, everyone. Welcome. Thanks for being here. So I'm really excited today to share space with Alison Crosthwait. Alison is a guide medicine woman in Canada. And I love, there's so much that I could say to define Alison, but one of the things I so love about her, and I'm looking very forward to spending some one-on-one time in a deeper way with her today, is, Alison is fearless in what she talks about. So she's a beautiful writer and she has a very clear voice, and she's not afraid to talk about the things, the edges, that so many are fearful. My little Scorpio heart loves that I can talk to her about sex, about money, about power, about resources, and she can go for it and is unafraid. So all of it, as we know, comes up in our work as we're working through our processes, through our shadow work, all the accompanying practices we do with our medicine work. So I'm delighted to have her today. Alison, welcome. I'd love for you to start by sharing a little bit about your background because it's so unique. You came through and to this medicine path in a very personal and unique way. So I'd love for you to share that if you would.
Sure. So I grew up in a fundamentalist Christian household, which was the foundation for a lot of things, including an early connection to spirituality. That was the huge gift of that. But there were a lot of problems too. And there's so many things I could say, but I'll say this. I tried to be a really good girl. I worked really hard to do well at school. I was really trying to be the good person and developed this really strong personality channeled towards being very, very, very good and pleasing everybody not in a like people pleasing way. That's not always been my thing, but in a she's good, she's great, she's successful kind of way. And so I was thinking about going into social work or medicine or something, but then I got a job in finance for the summer in university. And, it was so exciting. I loved the trading floor. I thought it was so much fun. And I think, looking back as a therapist, it's like a compensation. Do you want me to, I know you're taking care of Tom. Do you want me to keep going? Okay. So I think that like the wild, aggressive part of finance was was attractive to me because I was supposed to be such a good girl. But here I was being successful and making money, but also getting to swear on the phone and be not such a good girl. So I found that drive part really attractive. I love numbers. I love math. I love analysis, and went on a whole 15-year career in quantitative finance. And completely unfulfilling. Just kept hitting up against, I feel like shit inside. What am I going to do? I'm going to have another gin and tonic. Like I didn't know how to handle anything, and my relationships were a mess. Like it was a mess, and I looked really successful. And I made a lot of money, and that was very confusing, like dissonance, inner and outer. And it was through the stress of that Wall Street career. I ended up on Wall Street for a period of time. It was through that I went to therapy, and that's where things first started to change. But the universe wasn't done with me yet because it wasn't like, oh, Alison, you just need to be a little less stressed. It wanted more from me. Wow, it's amazing to tell this story. Oh my God. That was true one day. So I wanted to have a baby, another very natural, normal desire. And I had roadblock after roadblock and lost a son late term. And I was broken, and therapy was not doing it for me. Like, that wasn't enough. And I had this feeling like there's got to be more. There's got to be more. And so I found ayahuasca, and I just felt called. And one of the things that has always remained intact in my life through all the ups and downs is a very strong intuition and my own healing. So even when I was a mess, I would make way and say, no, I got to do this next. I got to do this next, which, looking back, is astonishing, because I really didn't have any idea of who I was, the contribution I could make, the possibilities for healing. Like, I knew nothing. But I went and I did the ceremony, and I met grandmother ayahuasca, and I said, I want to have a baby. And she woke up my sexuality. Go figure. And that was the beginning of a love affair with the plants that continues to this day.
Beautiful. Thank you so much. My first question for you is, because of your unique background among the guide world, so there's a lot of people who don't have much of a healing background, haven't done a whole lot of personal work or shadow work, and they read about it and they hear about it, and they want to go straight to the journey. They want to go straight to the peak experience. And what I and so many other guides are finding, that if you come in with that mindset, say, of the finance world or the tech world, and you're striving and you're a materialist, if you don't first do the foundational work and personal work, one of two things tends to happen. Either you are completely cracked open and shattered by so much, so fast, too soon, without the resourcing and net to hold it, or you just go into the extreme ego inflation of, now I'm not like the greatest banker in the world. Now I'm the greatest spiritual speaker in the world, right? And so it's like, oof, okay, slow the roll. Like, let's slow down. And let's talk about the foundational work. So given that you've had feet in both worlds, I would love to hear about your reflections of that and what you think is really, really necessary and foundational before people step into that deeper work.
Oh my gosh, I love talking to you. Yes, exactly. So I actually will not work with someone who has not had usually a few years of self-exploration. The way that I don't like to put it in boxes and say, oh, you have to have been in therapy or you need a meditation practice, but you need something. And what I look for is an awareness of how we've created the life that we're living, like some awareness of our patterns and some awareness of like what has hurt us in life that we've dealt with and how we dealt with that in generative and not generative ways. Like, no judgment to it, just the ability to have that conversation says to me that you might be ready to see a little more of how you created your life. Because absolutely, like, this work is the most humbling work. Like, if we're honest as guides, and this is one of the reasons I resonate with you and your community, if we're honest, we don't know very much at all about the mystery that is life. And we have to be able to hold that not knowing to our core and stay present even despite it. So whereas in finance, it might be, oh, I know this, and here's my T4. What do you call them in W-2, I think? Like, here's my income. But it's like, that becomes this badge of security. As soon as you step out of that world, the badge of security, there isn't one. There's just the breath in the present moment. And I think that knowing that a little bit, having some kind of awareness of that is necessary before we journey. And for people's benefit, that's for people's benefit. And if you've never been in therapy and you've never meditated, there's a world of possibility like right there for you. You don't need to journey yet. There's a lot of exploration right there.
Beautifully said. Yeah. One of the things I've seen you write about frequently that I so resonate with is it's not about the medicine. It's really not about the medicine. And that's something, we've seen in our microdosing community. We work with many, many beginners. And because of the Western framework of being externally focused, it's really hard for them to get, there's a learning curve to getting that. It's not the medicine doing something to you. It's really you. It's potentiating you. And when you stop practice, you don't lose it. And then you trust like deeper and more deeply, like, oh, this is mine to hold forever. This came within me. The medicine and nature just helped ignite it within. And so once you get it, you get it. But most people don't realize that. And with the rush of the media and the media portrayals of speed and ease and prescriptions and couching these medicines as drugs, that's been really problematic to educate people that it isn't about the medicine. So I know you work with people from microdosing through ceremony. So I'd love for you to reflect on that and how you approach and educate people that way.
Yeah, this is another way that you and I resonate so much. And it is an education process. There's no doubt. And it's a little paradoxical because the medicine does allow these huge shifts that I certainly in this lifetime probably wouldn't have had without the medicine. So yes. And I like to talk about it like a love relationship. Like you both have to show up. And you do get to know each other. So at the beginning, I do a lot of, when people start to microdose, I do a lot of, no more. People often want to take more and more often. And I say, no, let's stick for this 8 weeks. Let's just do the twice a week and just see. And then at the end, you can check in with your intuition and go there. But let's create a very careful container the first time and just stick to it. Kind of like you go to therapy once a week when you're first starting. Like just stick to it and see what happens when you have 2 dates a week. Like let's just see, give it a chance.
Let's talk about sex. From love, relation to sex. So I would love, again, it's one of those things that's not really talked about in the mainstream press and media, or even, on social media guides. But our sexual energy is the power of creation. It truly is. And so while we, think of sexual energy and immediately go to, it's way more than just the conventional box that we think of. So I would love for you to speak a bit about that, your work in that area and what you've seen and witnessed.
Yeah, sure. Mm-hmm. I mean, this was my big area of surprise and excitement. And this was the avenue by which the plants woke me up. And I was brought up to be a really good girl with huge sexual repression. And it was a very powerful journey to take apart that conditioning with the very strong help of grandmother ayahuasca, who's a very strong medicine. And she wouldn't let me, ceremony after ceremony, I would try to have a different intention. And she was like, nope. And I think that, I can only speak as someone who identifies as a woman because that's my experience, although I see it with other genders as well. I think we make sex into intercourse. So and in our culture, it becomes about the act between two people. And this it's impossible for us to find ourselves in that until we have ourselves separately first. So the big lesson for me has been about, like, I feel so juicy and have done so much work on this that I can feel turned on in a heartbeat, whether I'm in relationship or not. And that's great and fine. And the way we were born to live, it's not about, am I making my man happy? But it can get very complicated in these intimate relationships. And so what I love about helping people through this is watching them light up and watching them realize their sexuality is their own. And then they can choose to share it as they want to. But it's not about the act of sex. That's just one like teensy part of the joy of being alive. Like every moment I like take an inhale, I share something with you, you smile, and then, I might relax. Like that's all orgasmic. And the medicine really clears out a lot of, A, shame, B, blockage to sensation, puts my nervous system together so the trauma's not there and I can feel juicy and powerful and also not afraid to say it. And all of those pieces are so important for us. And that's when sexuality is not harmful. This is the thing. Repression hurts. It hurts people. It comes out backwards. So we need this, and we need men to do this work. We need everybody to do this work of owning their sexuality and not making it dependent on someone else.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, specifically, I know in the guide world, there's a range of medicines. I know you and I both resonate with mushrooms very much. Mushrooms in particular are a very relational medicine, especially when it comes to microdosing. People find that it's so subtle, it's so powerful, but sometimes because of its subtlety, it's through your relationships that people reflect back to you. Whether it's through group work or community or your therapist or your kids, your partner, they notice before you do sometimes the subtle shifts in you. However, so then we have people who are in relationship and people who are single, and not in partnership practicing. And sometimes the single people feel a little left out, like are they going to miss something because they're not in a partnership to have that growth and that relationship. But at the same time, I assure them it's really a powerful time to do this self-work when you are in your sovereignty and you are in your energy, because you're very likely to attract and be attracted to a very different person when you are healed, right? It's actually in some ways, yes, you can see your growth with a partner, but on the other hand, is your partner going to grow simultaneously and grow with you and be able to hold this expanded version of you? So that's just a unique wrinkle with this work that we come up against. And I don't think it's talked about enough of couples and the dynamics of relationship. Yes. So have you experienced couples practicing together, and do you embrace that? Yeah.
Yes. I mean, I've experienced everything from working with someone who did not tell her husband she was doing this, all the way through to couples doing it side by side. And people who are completely single doing it. And I just got to say, every human life has its enjoyable side and its more challenging side. I think that the couples who do it together, they got to have a lot of ground and communication to start. It's a wild ride, especially if they're parenting. And it's totally doable. But you got two people going through big shifts together. And a cornerstone of the work I do in microdosing, and I'm sure you're similar, is grounding. Everybody wants the shift. And really, we have no trouble with our crown, right? Like we got the vision for the shift. It's about just taking that time to ground and feel our own selves. And if we can do that, I think it's a really amazing thing to do together. I mean, just fantastic.
Beautiful. Money. I would love to talk about money. I know it's a subject you are very, very passionate about, and you have unique insight given your background. But again, money is a subject that we don't really talk about, or we frame it in a certain way, and we tend to keep it emotionless when it is such an emotional subject. And there's so much behind money and the dynamics of money. I mean, just in the instance of, when people come and interact and exchange for healing services, the way they relate to payment and pain and money there's so many rich psychological tells, if you will, in those dynamics. So yeah, I would love to hear your thoughts on money and working with the topic of money and medicine work.
Yeah, I mean, there are so many angles to this. I think the one that I feel most strongly about off the top is the link between trauma and money, and claiming what's ours and having boundaries and self-worth when we have experienced a lot of trauma and when we're in non-dominant groups where we're not supposed to make a lot of money. Healers, people who identify as women who are also healers in the world get so much mother projection. And we're not supposed to be making money off this. We're supposed to be taking care of the world. That's what we're supposed to be doing. And also cleaning up after you, like that. And that's unconscious, but that is like all there. So for anyone who's in that situation, you're working against the grain to thrive and be abundant. And it's so important. So whatever is coming up around money is as important as relationships, is as important as sex, is as important as self-worth. It's all like of a piece. I'm on a bit of a thing right now about the opioid crisis. I've gone deep. Like I've read all the stuff, not all, of course, but I've gone deep on the laws and how did this happen? How did they get away with it? And I think it's so important for us to ground and realize that highly addictive substances were provided liberally, profiting a very few number of people. And yet the medicines that we work with are somehow dangerous. And this is an epidemic. And so there's the political and the importance of that. But this is how money is seen in our society. We're sick. We are sick. We are willing to kill people for money. Like there's words for that. And then people who are trying to help, it's like we get this projection and this, well, it shouldn't be that you make money. And so we have to just see the picture. And there's a million examples of this, but really see we are very sick around money. We're ill. Like we have a disease. We deserve like all the compassion in the world. And I don't think there's barely anyone who I trust when they speak about money. There's a few, but most of us are deep in our unconscious wounding. So we have so much unpacking to do. Like, let's talk about it. Let's strive to change this. Like, let's really do that because we all like this is the heart of social justice is having access to resources. Healers don't generally have a ton of money. You see this all the time. Like we should have all the money. And even saying that, I'm like, oh, someone's going to hate me for saying that. But you've got people making billions, and now you've got these pharma companies who want to patent the psychedelic chemical. I mean, what are we doing? What are we doing?
I know you and I, I know. Yes. No, you and I resonate big on those topics for sure. I think Yeah, I agree so passionately with everything you just said. And also, I see, even well meaning people who most of the time are touched and opened and transformed by psychedelics in their own life are coming from management consulting or tech or finance. And they want to help, they want to support the movement. But they're coming with all of the frameworks and mindset of what they have come from. So as we see people, it's when I talk to people who've been in the healing arts for decades, it's kind of feels like, we were in like these weird fringes, like the weird woman on the dead end street, just kind of, we don't quite know what she's doing and we're not going to really give her any respect, but we're just going to kind of ignore her and she's free to do her thing because we're not really paying attention. There's an advantage to that, right? Now that people are like, we can commodify this and we can profit off this and we can take this, package it so that only we will be safe enough to control it. Then it becomes no longer, fringy and dismissed. It becomes dangerous, unless it's in the hands of such and such. And so a lot of people coming into the field that are from, more corporate backgrounds don't really understand that fundamentally we need to change the whole table setting at its core and set things up differently. We can't set things up in the same way. So yes, I completely agree. That it's just not the consciousness raising or the awakening, or it's fundamentally we can't have one without the social justice component beside it, right?
Yes.
Yeah,
Exactly. And part of that is feeling our feelings. This is where, it's like, oh, I get it. The world isn't how it should be. We've got the crown and all the, like, more and more people, we get it, but it has to get down here. Mm-hmm. And like my experience in the world personally and with the people I know is that is not a quick and easy journey to take the patriarchy out of the girl. Like I'm still working that and it's hard. And there is work to be done, like ceremony after ceremony. I'm like sobbing and puking with no end in sight. And I believe that we have to kind of surrender with no end in sight to really like crack and break and get through. And we never fully get through because we live here.
Right.
So this is exactly it. Like I'm living in the little cul-de-sac, the fringe woman just doing what she does because like that's something that you don't get to understand until you understand it.
Right. I'd love for you to share. So a lot of people in our community are microdosing in their first weeks and months. And many people we find when they start out, they're like, I'm good with microdosing. I'm drawn to microdose, but I have no interest. I'm either nervous or don't think it's for me to trip. I don't trip. But then, after they connect and build a relationship with the medicine, they really become called in such a beautiful way frequently and called to explore working with someone to go deeper and accompany them. So I'd love for you to talk about the arc between beginning to microdose and connecting and then moving into a more ceremonial experience. How do you hold that for people? Is it a certain length of time? And kind of what does your framework look like when you work with someone all the way through the experience?
Right. So I do separate microdosing and full dose journeys by program. And a lot of people do start with the microdosing and they do the inner work. Like you said it perfectly. Like they start to trust it and they go, oh, I see what's possible. I want more. And I really trust that because that comes from their relationship with the medicine itself. I think it's a really beautiful place to come from. I do get a fair number of people also coming sort of cold, wanting the journeys. And often those are a little less transformational because they haven't done as much building relationship with the plant. Once somebody decides to do the full dose journey, we're working on intentions. I use the word assessment, but language is limiting. I have a very detailed assessment where we look at physical, emotional, mental, spiritual, and sexual aspects of you to really get a sense of where the energy could move, so that we're on the same page as to where there might be stuck places or places to look. Because often we'll have an intention and we'll say, oh, I want to be a fully expressed human being, or I want to be at peace. These are great intentions. And without digging into the blocks, I don't know, when was the last time you cried? Do you feel a connection to nature? Those types of things. How is your physical body? How is it doing? And those types of things are really important context as we go into ceremony. And then I hold the medicine in a fairly shamanic way. A lot of my work is psychotherapeutic on either side. When I'm in ceremony, I really see myself as a medicine woman. I have a number of lineages I've studied in that come together and protect the space. We are entering sacred space. That's how I see our relationship with the medicine. And we really have a lot of preparation in terms of how we're going to interact with each other in that space and how we're not going to interact with each other. And then when it's over, then we can talk and have our snacks and whatever. So there's a very clear container that I create and then follow on integration from there, doing deep somatic work, breath work, whatever. Sometimes I think I should have a punchier way of saying how I work, but the truth is everyone's so unique. So if it's money we're going to dig into money. If it's your health, we're going to dig into your health. We are going to go where you need to go because I trust your journey. I trust it implicitly. Your being is calling you into growth, and whatever area is calling you is hurting. That's the opportunity. So we're going to go there.
Beautiful. Beautiful. And you just shared what I think is so, so important for people who are new to realize is that, this is, especially your first journey, it's a once in a lifetime experience. Often it is like nothing else. And so, just up there with the birth of your first child or your wedding day, it's hold it and take your time and really don't limit yourself. At the beginning of our program, I remember people when they got to the point where they were curious and seeking a guide, it was, they're trying to pull names off of a directory or Google or who was close, who's close by. And we quickly realized that it has nothing to do with who's close by. It could be the most inconvenient person that's across the globe. But the thing is, it's worth that trip halfway across the globe if that's the guide for you. And so you don't know that until you take your time to feel into the questions you just posed. What are you up to here? What are the threads? Because the mushroom is going to meet you there. And so it's good to speak that and have a guide who can work with you and that you can see and hear and touch their energetics and their resonance and their vibe and know, this is my guide. And if she's in Canada, so be it. I go to Canada, right?
That's right. Yeah. A lot of people do say it's like the birth of their first child. I've heard that a number of times too. And I think it's really true. Can we elevate this to a pilgrimage rather than a transaction?
Beautiful. Beautifully said. Absolutely. Yeah. Snake. I'm curious. since we met, it's a question I have when I've seen you referred to as Snake by others in the community. So I would love to hear the story of how your alter ego came about.
Yeah, sure. Well, my mother's terrified of snakes and I inherited it. So it's a very unlikely medicine name. But I was in a meeting with my mentor, and this is like, I find the whole project of public communication so complex. Like, I'm a therapist, I hold space. I'm a fiery Gemini. I've got a lot to say, and it doesn't all make sense. Language is just separating and polarizing anyways. Why am I even doing it? Like, there's all these different things, and I get in my head and the marketing piece and And so my mentor was like, okay, just settle and go inside and see what's there. And what's there was this black snake at the bottom of my pelvis, curling around like this. And then he went up my spine, very Kundalini-like. And snake is my aliveness. It's me speaking without being afraid to scare people. I accomplish it in varying amounts, but this is my totem of, and I love that you said fearless as the quality that came to you about me at the beginning. And I thought, okay, I'm doing snake right in some ways, because I think, we're socialized not to scare people. Mm-hmm. But I don't mean scare you like traumatize you, but it is true that as medicine women, we can see things, and there are things we can speak and feel safe speaking that are really important. And I continually challenge myself with my clients with love. Like, snakes are love. We think they're bad, but they're not. They're just super alive. And with love, like, this is what I see.
I love it. Thank you.
You're welcome.
It's beautiful. Beautiful. I would love, given all we just talked about and how quickly things are moving in this field and in this space, what would your dream be that you would love to see take shape in this moment, in this movement, how people will connect with medicines in a way that's true and aligned?
I mean, my dream would be that people who have been doing this work on themselves and with the medicine for a long time were somehow really visibly and obviously the people that we go to. Oh, here's another dream. That there were some people with frameworks who got that, and instead of trying to create their own empires, gathered some of us in and pointed the light on us and protected us, as we are unprotected. That's something people need to really remember about us, especially when they say, like, that the price isn't right or this isn't right. We are very vulnerable and very human, and we hold a lot of space for a lot of people. So I would love to see more courage taking from people to say, okay, this is how it needs to look, could look.
Lovely. I think that's so much richness there, but I think that's so, for people on the outside particularly, and the public at large, to hold space, to hold sacred space is not just the time that you're with someone. It is all of the work that you need to do to clear yourself and clear your energy so it's really a devotion, and it comes with a lot of sacrifice. It's very hard to kind of live in the world and be a guide at the same time. It's hard to be in relationship and be a guide because of the wholeness and totality that it takes to hold space for people. And so when we're pricing and when we're investing in someone in that kind of relationship, I think it's important that we evolve out of this hourly rate mentality, or this, healing service as hospitality style industry. It's so much more than that. And I'm slightly biased, but I think it's the most important work you can do in your lifetime. It's the one thing you can do. Your healing is the one thing you can do that will touch every single other aspect of your life. So that should be your biggest investment always. Right?
Yeah.
We're getting there. We're getting there.
Yeah. And I think that pain is what calls us. Like, I don't want to be doomsday. I don't mean that. But it's pain that calls us. And even today, the issues that I'm working on with myself are the places I'm hurting or afraid. And can I honestly say that if I wasn't hurting or afraid, that I would have as great devotion? If I hadn't lost my son, would I be here? And so one of the things snakes sees, right? It's like there is going to be a lot of pain for us to really get this in our bones, that this is our best investment, our biggest, most important.
Yeah, thank you. Are mushrooms your primary medicine that you work with?
They're my primary. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Gotcha.
I have been doing some work with 5-MeO with my advanced students, because 5-MeO, talking about sex and money, has been very core to a real purging of my frequencies. And I believe in it very much, but I also talk about foundations. I believe it is being served way too widely. And I think a lot of foundation needs to be done.
Yeah, for those, if you don't mind sharing a little bit more about 5-MeO, a lot of people in our community are microdosing with mushrooms. And so 5-MeO is new to them. And it's funny, I know when I talk on podcasts and panels and things to the general public, one of the common questions is, so are all the medicines the same? Is microdosing going to be the same as ayahuasca? And it's like, no, slightly different tone and tenor. Yes. Slightly. Yes. So yeah, for those who are new to 5-MeO, can you share a little bit about why someone would come to that medicine? It's a big, big medicine. And when do you find, what kind of clients do you feel something clicks and you're like, it's time for this medicine for them?
So I believe that each of us are called to the various medicines, and it is like a relationship, a love relationship. So some people can have multiple at the same time. Many of us struggle with that, to really do it deeply and well. I don't really get into mixing them very much. I like to do a lot of work with one and then move into another. So I call my Empower program, my full dose journey transformational program, I call it my Earth program. You're like purging and you're getting grounded and you're doing the work. And then I call 5-MeO, which is the synthetic version of Bufo alvarius, the toad secretion. I call that my Heaven program. It's the best way I can describe it, and it's different for everyone, but the best way I can describe it is a very fast acting near-death experience. In fact, not so near. You could say that you die. And that is incredibly powerful for grounding us in the reality of our death. And it's a lot to handle, especially if you have trauma in coming into the world, to then go out of it in a medicine experience incredibly sensitive. And I feel very strongly, in particular with that medicine, that there are many unbalanced facilitators out there. And I don't know exactly why, but you are so vulnerable on that medicine. The slightest movement your facilitator makes is going to feel like the earth is cracking. So you really need someone really, really grounded for that one. For me, it just opened all my frequencies. So it's really gotten my juice going. It's heightened my sexuality tremendously. It's heightened my energy. I'm so much more open and permeable, but it's also a very intense experience. And I like to see someone do work for a long period of time and also build trust with me, and then feel called. I never, ever, ever suggest. I only ever respond to requests for that medicine.
Beautiful. Yeah. Many people live in places where they don't feel like. I am in California. You're in Canada, which is in many ways far ahead, exceeding the United States in terms of kind of moving along on all fronts, in some ways, in terms of your moves toward decriminalization and legality and corporate interests, for sure, in Canada around medicine work. So how do you work with people that are in places where they can't necessarily build a community where they live? And do you welcome people coming to you, or do you go to people? How does that work?
Yeah, so I have traveled. I traveled very selectively, but I welcome people out here. And I do ceremony in this room. You can see it's snowy, but the floors are softly heated.
It's so beautiful.
So it's a beautiful room for ceremony. And there's a spa 4 minutes down the way. So all the food and everything's taken care of in a really nice way. I'm just 90 minutes east of Toronto. That's an easy flight for most. So I think that's a beautiful way, quite an easy, seamless way to come. I also want to mention one piece, which is I do also believe in the mini dose. More and more, I believe in the mini dose. And what I mean by the mini dose, because we're all making up the rules here, is the microdose is the subperceptual, maybe 100 milligrams, say, of psilocybin. The mini dose is for most of my clients, 300 or 400 milligrams. So it's once you're comfortable with the medicine and you are ready to set an intention and create space for yourself, that is a dose that is for most people not overwhelming, very, very light visuals, if any, but gives you a stronger experience in your own home. I am a personal non-believer in solo journeys in general, for healing purposes in general. But I think the mini dose is a really nice way to hold yourself if you've been doing well, holding yourself and having online support in a microdosing program.
Beautiful. Thank you. My last question for you is, there's a lot of people who start microdosing who would never have expected it at the time. But once they start practice, they're called to this work and working in this field, in this space. I have so many examples of people who 2 years ago were consultants or marketing or in corporate and are now death doulas and microdosing coaches and nature therapists incorporating medicine work. So that's one element. And then there's a whole lot of clinicians, I think, that are coming around to the fact that, their clients are asking them for this in many respects. So when people come now and they genuinely want to work with medicines in a reverential, high integrity way, in terms of learning, a lot of them are like, should I go enroll in the psychedelic certification program? Should I go here? What should I do? So do you have any advice or thoughts on, and maybe based on your own experience, what kind of learning is the most meaningful if you get called to do this work?
Oh, I love this question. I could seriously go back and forth with you on this for 2 hours because I think that we both have lots of thoughts on this. I think a couple things. Our own work is always the first. And this is how I was trained as a therapist. Way before medicine work, we had to do 4 years of group therapy plus our own therapy, getting triggered by each other all the time before we could even see a client. And nowadays it's like everybody's seeing clients, everybody. And I'm like, whoa. And I remember the first time I did, I was like shaking, and he sat down in front of me and he started to cry. And I was like, oh, this is what they mean by projection. Because I literally don't know what I'm doing, but he thinks he's seeing a therapist, so he's going to cry. Like, I mean, the formation period was so long, and the amount of supervision. And so I can't be shaken from my belief that whatever the modality is, your own work, first and foremost for a long time before you start poking in other people. And then I think we know our teachers. I think the pull of certification, I can feel it sometimes. I'll get an email and I'll be like, ooh, that's great. We have to ask ourselves some things. I would much rather someone go and actually get a therapist's license that allows them to do things in the world than get a psychedelic certification because they think it's going to get them something. It's kind of like all the life coaching certifications. Like, some of them are good, some of them aren't. Let's put all that to the side. And what I usually say to people when they come to me is like, who's your teacher right now? You know, like, who's your teacher? Like, and I don't mean this, like, I have a lot of trauma and lineage, so I don't mean this the way it's going to sound, but we prostrate before our teachers. Like, and that's how we make mistakes. That's how we grow. And then we may have another teacher, but we go wholeheartedly into our path with heart, you could say, and we follow it. And I don't know what that looks like for everybody. It looks different things. But what I'm seeing in a lot of the certifications, some of them, the smaller ones, I'm like, oh, that could be really juicy for the right person. And some of them, I'm like, okay, I'm just a little concerned about how we're commodifying this work. Yeah. And I also want to say one other thing. The certifications, it's so interesting to me that people will pay for certifications, big ticket prices. Then the certifications don't get them anywhere, but they haven't done their own therapy, for example. And if you took, like, I know one of the big certifications is like $20,000. So if you took that $20,000 and spent that on, going to Peru and doing medicine work, or doing one of the guides that you talk to's transformational programs and having a therapist every week, you could do that for a few years. And I think you'd be better off. That would be my view.
Absolutely. Beautifully said. Yeah, I think I hear that a lot in people. And I do think part of it is just we're so steeped in the Western academic tradition of permission to do something. I need the authority to bestow what I'm allowed to do, where I'm allowed to do it, what geographic location I need to be in to be okay, when really it's the embodied experience of doing it that's the most important thing above all. So yeah, well said.
And could I add more there? Mentors right now have never actually done psychedelics. And there are many rich traditions of people who have earned their wisdom over time in their ability to sit with people, whether that's psychoanalytically. That's a gorgeous tradition with a ton of information on trauma and attachment and intimacy and sexuality. Like, there are wisdom traditions, mystical traditions. Chinese medicine is full of amazing wisdom. So we don't need to find our wisdom necessarily from people teaching us how to serve mushrooms. We need to do our own work and grapple with that and see what comes from that.
Right. Thank you so much, Alison. I love your approach so much. Your winter wonderland there is extraordinary. Yeah. So how can people find you? Do you have a website to share? Are you on social media?
Yeah, I'm on Instagram. I can't believe I'm on Instagram, but I'm on Instagram. Alison Crosthwait. I'm on LinkedIn. My website is a great place to go. So AlisonCrosthwait.com/offerings gives you all my offerings, and there's an application button, and there's a whole bunch of different tiers. There's the free stuff. I have a free Discord community. You come in, get to know us, and then all the way through up to bigger transformational programs. So just go in, take a look. I would really love to work with anyone from your community, Casey. You are a gift to me in more ways than you know. So thank you.
Thank you so much. Always great to be with you. Thank you for listening to today's episode of the Microdosing for Healing podcast. Are you ready to take the next step? Please visit us at microdosingforhealing.com to access our free Microdosing 101 workshop. In it, you'll learn more about our diverse community, our supportive group programs, and discover if earth medicine practice might be right for you. See you in the next episode.